everyone. My name is Alex, and I am part of the Tribeca New Music team. Today, we are so grateful to be joined by internationally acclaimed composer and pianist Jeremy Ajani Jordan. Jeremy has performed with Tribeca New Music in the past, most recently this past November in our Best in Score concert. Today, Jeremy and I will be discussing his musical journey, his newest album, and what he has been listening to on repeat lately. Jeremy, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So let's just jump right in. So I think that what we are really interested in is kind of what was your musical journey? What was your path with music? Um, and how did you get started with all of it?
Yeah, my path and my journey with music really sort of began with my family. My parents are both musicians, so I was sort of born into an environment where music was always being made, and they never really pressed me to pursue it. So there was no pressure or anything like that. But it was just kind of a natural thing to do. I saw them doing it all the time, and I just loved doing it. So they were my first teachers, and I started mostly by playing classical music. And so for the first, I'd say maybe 10 years of my sort of musical life, I was pretty much only doing that, just playing a lot of classical music, studying, learning and getting better. Then I would say, sometime in my early teens, I started playing a lot more jazz, playing in big bands, playing in combos, learning a lot more about the history and the language of that sort of music. And from there, the floodgates just kind of opened, and I started getting, sort of more into gospel music and R&B and production and things like that. And the rest is kind of history. Yeah,
That's great. No, and I love the fact that you say that your parents were your first teachers.
yeah,
That must have been really nice growing up in a musical household. Were they class or are they classical musicians or did they
they are.
do other
Yeah,
genres?
they mostly play classical music. They're both pianists and singers.
Oh,
So
great.
that was sort of the background that they were coming from. But they were very, sort of encouraging of me getting into other sorts of, styles of music and, other sorts of types of performances. So, they were always very encouraging with that.
That's great. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's great to have encouraging parents.
It is, yeah.
So then I guess like going on from that, it would I in your latest album for Flint, could we talk about that a little bit because
Sure,
there's a lot there. You there's a lot of it's a classical quote unquote album, but there's a lot
right,
of
right,
jazz influence in it, and then it's
sure,
also an album for Flint, Michigan. Could you just
right.
walk us through the process of writing it, how you decided to write it, and just basically give us the details.
I think it sort of was born just from me, hearing about the Flint Water Crisis, I guess, just like everybody else. And I think when I sort of heard about it, I was obviously kind of devastated because of how terrible the situation was for those people. So I was kind of thinking, well, what can I really do as a musician to help them? I mean, I can't really play them a song. That's not really going to help very much. So the best thing that I could come up with was, maybe creating an album and then having the proceeds from that, be donated to them. So that way it would be sort of real help. And I knew that it would, provide, more than just comfort, but actual like, sort of real assistance. So it was wonderful. I reached out to a very wonderful charitable organization in Flint, and they're awesome. They're called Flint for Flint, and they were very kind. So essentially, what they do is that they had sort of partnered with I believe, a local water bottling plant, and basically what they were doing is delivering gallons of fresh water to various households that still needed it, and they could use it for cooking and drinking and bathing and things like that. So it was great. I reached out to Bandcamp, which is also a pretty awesome organization that hosts albums and a lot of other musical creations. And they were very kind. They agreed to waive their revenue share and donate it to that charity as well. So the rest was actually kind of easy. I wrote the music. I I gathered the musicians, we recorded it, and it turned out really wonderfully. And some of the music was written just a little bit before I had decided to do this project, but the majority of it was written afterwards. So it was kind of written for them, and sort of in dedication to them, but also it was I knew that it would be helping them in a way that was more than just artistic and providing real aid. So that's how that came to be. And so it wasn't just me. A lot of other organizations were very kind in donating their time and their resources to make it happen. I really just had to make the music and play it. So it was definitely a team effort. It was awesome.
And you can hear that it's just made with love, and
Nice.
you can hear where you were coming from, and it's that's great. It's amazing that Bandcamp waived the fees as well. I didn't
Yeah.
realize that they did that. They're a pretty good
Yeah, they
organization.
did. They're very kind folks over there. Not just in that regard, but they sort of have a reputation of really being sort of an artist first platform. Like they're kind of like, I guess that sort of the anti Spotify
Yeah.
in some ways. So
Right.
they're really nice folks, and I think since their whole paradigm is sort of about prioritizing the well being of their community and not just making money. I
Right.
wasn't really that shocked that they were happy to help
Yeah.
in that way. So that was really
Yeah.
cool of them.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So then I guess my next question and would be now, where how did you do it all? How did you get to this point in your life? Because you went to Juilliard
Mhm.
and you thrived there, and then after that, how did you always know that you wanted to be a composer and a performer? How did you get here? What was that
Yeah,
journey like?
I think that I did always know that I wanted to compose. So I would, when I was very young, I wrote all the time. So I was always writing, different things that sort of interested me. And I think that once you get to a certain point, especially if you're a musician that's pursuing things in an academic way, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times you're kind of forced to pick a lane, right? You get sort of tracked into sort of one sort of thing, which, to be fair, I sort of understand. I mean, when you're dealing with a degree program or something like that, you have certain academic qualifications that you have to fulfill, which is nice, but then it can also maybe end up stunting the growth of some of your other interests as a musician. So I had to make sure to just sort of feed myself in that way. I was studying piano and studying to be a pianist, so I sort of had to nourish, I guess, my compositional side on my own. But I had no problem doing that. I had kind of been doing that my whole life in a way. And I think that, if anything, that's kind of a bit of a throwback to how a lot of instrumentalists used to be. I think that in generations past, it was kind of expected that anybody who played an instrument would also write their own music. And I think the separation of those two disciplines is kind of something that's happened more recently in the history of music. So I guess I just kind of took the old school approach to it, and I just sort of felt that hey, if I'm playing, I should also be writing things for myself to play. And I've always loved doing that. And I think that once I finished school, I was actually kind of glad that I was sort of diligent about nourishing that side of my um, musicianship, because once I was done with school, there was tons of outlets for composition. So once I think the sort of moral from that is to just sort of water yourself. If there's something that you feel that you're not getting from somewhere, then take care of yourself and nourish yourself in that way, and the opportunities to use those gifts will come at some point. So that's kind of how I went about doing it, and I'm really grateful I did, because now there's tons of outlets for me as both a pianist and a composer, and I use them both as much as I can.
That's great that's great advice.
Yeah,
Water yourself as much as that. Water, like, keep filling your cup. Yeah, and just
yeah.
keep going.
Hmm.
And then so and I do love that because we forget that, Clara Schumann, she was one of the best concert pianists ever, but she was
Yeah,
also one of the best composers
yeah,
ever. So,
absolutely.
and we forget that, back then playing equaled composing.
It
And
did. Yeah,
that's
that's right.
great. That's great that you're continuing that tradition.
Yeah,
And also, I've heard that you also do some audio engineering. You also
that's right.
produce. Could you
Yeah,
talk about
yeah.
that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, my when I was really young, my father was very much into those sorts of things. So I was kind of always around like analog recording gear and stuff like that when I was really little. So I got familiar with the process, and I love it. It's a lot of fun. I think that it also provides a lot of opportunities for use in performance. I mean, there's obviously in the years since my childhood, there's been tons of development with digital audio workstations and programs, and then also just the portability of technology. I mean, people have laptops and cell phones that are more powerful than the largest computers that were available when I was a kid. So it's really kind of it's really a lot of fun. I've done a lot of work mixing and mastering a lot of albums, and it's nice because I think being a performer and being a musician myself, it kind of gives me an ear for what a client is trying to do. I'm sort of familiar with how they want something to sound, so that helps a lot. But also, like I said, really the most interesting part of it has been applying that knowledge to actual performances, and integrating DAWs and synthesizers and electromechanical instruments into a performance is really really cool. And I think that it's sort of a constant reminder that instruments themselves are technology. I mean, they're really kind of we sort of take that for granted now, but at the time of their inception, they were really kind of marvels of engineering. I mean, just to build a saxophone or to build a piano is extremely complicated. I mean, if you look at brass instruments and how they've evolved into from being just sort of one sort of tube, right? And then now, of course, with all of the valve technology and things like that, and we have modern trumpets and modern French horns, and we just sort of pick them up and start playing them. But it's kind of easy to forget that at the time they were really pretty marvelous inventions. And so it's kind of nice. I think that computers have sort of carved a niche for themselves as being the next step of that evolution. And we don't think of computers as being musical instruments, but they kind of are. I mean, they're no more technologically advanced than the piano action was when it was first invented. So I think it's been a lot of fun, using that, and it's really pretty expressive. When you combine computers and technology with live performance, you can get some really beautiful results. So I've had a lot of fun doing that. I've done some of that stuff for Tribeca New Music, and so I'm really appreciative of them, being open-minded enough to give things like that a stage. So it's been a blast, really.
That's that I yeah, instruments are technology.
They are, yeah,
That is, you do for I forgot that. Like, you're I mean, because there is that is the argument of, is digital music music, and yeah, it absolutely
yeah.
is,
I
especially
think it
when you put it
is.
that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that even if you look at some of the instruments that we consider to be, sort of fundamental instruments. Like if you just go back in time and look at all of the different, stages of evolution that they went through from their initial inception to what they are now, you'll see that they're massively different. I mean, even the piano that I have in my living room is way different from a piano that like Mozart would have played. Like it's far more technologically advanced. And so that's kind of cool. And I think that computers are gradually becoming more and more accepted as just being a natural part of that same kind of evolution, which is cool. So, I love it.
Yeah, that is incredible. I love
Yeah.
that. I love hearing
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
So now the big question.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all big questions, but this is this is the next one we have because I think that the people who know you and the audience members who have seen you definitely want to know, what are you working on now? Where are
Cool.
we going to see you next? What are
Yeah.
your upcoming projects, engagements? Tell us.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, a lot of it is kind of up in the air because of everything that's sort of going on right now. But I think that right now, the biggest thing that I've done in sort of the last year, I've been doing a lot of live streaming, which is a lot of fun. And so my plan for 2022 is to sort of start doing that again in a more structured and regular way. When I first started doing live streaming, it was more just kind of a response to everything that was happening with the pandemic. It was kind of the only way to connect with an audience and to perform. And it was wonderful. But I think now, seeing how successful that can be, and how useful it can be, I kind of want to continue doing it, even when things begin to die down, and sort of return back to normal. I think that this sort of method of performance should continue in some ways, because the in my opinion, the most wonderful thing about it was being able to perform for people who are not local. I mean, I can be in my living room or be in one location and be performing for people in Europe and Canada and California really easily. And I think there's an undeniable value to that. And I really want to keep doing that. So that's my plan. I'll be streaming a lot from my YouTube channel, and doing all sorts of things. I'll be playing solo piano, playing some chamber music, playing some jazz and things like that with combos. So that's kind of my big project coming up for this year. The other thing that I'm doing, I'm supposed to be traveling to play a couple of recitals in various places around the states this year. Some of them may get moved or canceled or things like that, depending on the severity of what's going on. But as of now, there's quite a few of them scheduled. So my recommendation is to visit my website, which is just jeremyajaniJordan.com. And I update it fairly regularly with concerts, performances, any live streams that I'm releasing and things like that are also archived there, so people can always go and listen. So yeah, I'd say check that out if I'm in your town. I'm always thrilled if people stop by and say hello. So yeah, that's what's coming up next.
Excellent. Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've live streaming has really taken off. So that's
yeah.
exciting to hear that like I took a peek at your YouTube and yeah, I saw all of the live streams. It's very fun.
Oh, it
And it's
is.
really
Thanks.
accessible.
Yeah,
And yeah, and we'll have for those watching, we'll have everything in the description box below.
awesome.
But yeah, I guess and then the final question.
Hmm.
What are you listening to today? What is on your most listened to playlist right now?
That's a great question. I listen to I listen to a lot of jazz, mostly because I find it really educational. So I listen to a lot of Keith Jarrett lately. I've also been listening to a lot of McCoy Tyner, the fantastic jazz pianist. And then sort of outside of that, in terms of more modern things, from people who are kind of my contemporaries, I really enjoy listening to a great friend of mine. His name's Javier Santiago. He's a great pianist that's based out of the Bay Area. But he's got a really great album called Phoenix that I think came out about a year or two ago. So I listen to that a lot. It's really awesome. Um, Let's see, what else am I listening to? I've been listening to a lot of Bach organ works, some of the great organ works of Bach. There's a ton of awesome recordings out there to listen to. But I learned a lot from that, and I like to play the organ a lot. So it's, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful instruments. So I've been listening to a lot of that, and I've been listening to a lot of Scriabin. So like kind of a kind of a lot of pretty eclectic gathering of things. But I'd say if I were to scroll through my phone right now, that's probably what I'd see the most of. It's Bach, Scriabin, Keith Jarrett, McCoy Tyner, and my good friend Javier. So those are all awesome things to check out if anybody's looking for something to listen to.
Yeah, it's always no, because it's always interesting to hear what what composers are listening to and what's
Yeah,
and where their minds are at, you know?
yeah, yeah. That's
But
kind of
yeah,
that's where mine is.
yeah, great. And we'll definitely have a link to Javier's music as well.
Awesome,
So
awesome. Yeah,
yeah, so
you should really listen to it. I think you'll love it.
incredible. And we'll have links to everything that you are doing and you have done. We really hope that you'll come back and perform with Tribeca again because it was a joy
Anytime.
to hear you and to have you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it.
Yep, it's my
And
pleasure.
yeah, don't be a
Yeah.
stranger.
Yeah. I won't.
Thank
Thanks
you,
for having me.
Jeremy. Thank
My
you so
pleasure.
much.
Hmm.
Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for checking out today's interview. A big thank you to Artistic Director Preston Staley, the Tribeca New Music Board of Directors, and to all of you who support our channel. Be sure to let us know what you think in the comments section below. Hit that like button and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And send us your playlist of the pieces you're listening to today. We'll post the playlist on our website at tribecanewmusic.org for everyone to see and share. So until next time, I'm Alex Sassington, and I'll see you on Tribeca New Music Inviews.